I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and with liberty for all. Good evening. I am Regina Gouverneer, co-president of the League of Women Voters of Port Washington, Manhasset. Welcome to our Candidates Forum. Before we begin, I want to thank Judy Estequist, who is our technical advisor, Helen Kotsky, our vetter, Marie Bellon, our timer, and Judy Tempkin-Jacobson, our moderator. I would like to make a brief public relations pitch for the League of Women Voters. We work to inform the community about candidates' views on issues through forums such as this and through a variety of publications. We register voters at community events. We are a nonpartisan organization, which means we never support a candidate, although we do take positions on issues after studying them. We hope you will consider joining the League, which you can do on our website, LWV of PWM. Remember, the League is not for women only. I will now turn the meeting over to Judy Estequist. Judy will read the rules and procedures for the evening. All the candidates have agreed to these rules. Okay, Judy.
Okay. Here are the rules and procedures for the evening. The moderator will be a member of the League of Women Voters from outside the district. I am from Manhasset. I'm outside the district. Candidates' opening statements will be given in alphabetical order. The same order will be for opening and closing statements. Each candidate will be allowed 3 minutes for an opening statement. If there are many candidates, the moderator may limit the opening statements to 2 minutes. We haven't done that. After all candidates have spoken, the moderator will open the meeting with questions from the audience, submitted electronically before and/or during the forum. Electronic addresses for the questions will be publicized with the forum and available on the League of Women Voters website. The moderator will be the arbiter of whether questions are appropriate, repetitive, or abusive. And hopefully we will have none of that tonight. Port Washington always comes to the fore with good behavior. Each candidate will be given 1.5 minutes to answer each question. At the moderator's discretion, the time for response may be reduced as long as it is the same for everyone. There will be no rebuttal. Questions may be addressed to a specific candidate or to candidates in general, although all candidates will be given an opportunity to answer any question addressed to a specific individual. The moderator will attempt to rotate the order of responses for each question. A league member will act as timekeeper. That's Marie Bellon. There she is. 1/2 minute from the end of any given time period, the timekeeper will warn the speaker by showing the 30-second sign. When the time is up, she will hold up a stop sign. The speaker will be allowed to finish the sentence. Repeatedly speaking past the deadline may result in a candidate being muted. Candidates will have 2 minutes for a closing statement. Now the candidates may turn their cameras on. Since the purpose of this meeting is to determine the candidate's views, no substitute speaker will be allowed to appear should the candidate be unable to attend. The use of props, charts, or visuals, and the display of campaign literature is prohibited. In accordance with league policy, audio or video recording by authorized members of the media will be permitted only if agreed to by all the candidates present. The league maintains the right to record the forum and publish it on League of Women Voters controlled electronic pages. No other recording will be allowed. No partial transcript or recording may be published without written permission from the league. We will now proceed to opening candidates. Opening statements, I'm sorry. And Dr. Block, you will go first.
Hello, Port Washington. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for holding this event, and I want to thank the candidates for participating. I believe participation makes government stronger. I'm Adam Block. I was born and raised in Port Washington. My parents live here. My wife, Lauren, was born and raised here and is a physician in Northwell. She treats some of you and she works with others. We have 3 children in our schools, Elise and Brandon, who are twins, and in 3rd grade at Salem, and Jordan, our kindergartner at Salem. I'm a teacher of public health, and I started a local business, Port Skis, renting skis to children. I ran last year because many parents and I wanted better education for our children last spring. Everyone with children in the district understands what parents went through, homeschooling their children for months. Then the back to school decisions of August drove many parents to tears, drove to some people to think about leaving town. But in October, I was overjoyed when the elementary schools went back for 5 days and Weber and Schreiber went back to their hybrid schedule. Port Washington's teachers, paraprofessionals, facility staff have really shown this year when districts across the country were shuttered, duty called them and they returned to the classrooms with masks, with new complicated precautions they had to figure out and the can-do ingenuity that the moment required. They were forced by circumstances beyond anyone's control to figure out new ways of teaching under complicated and even scary circumstances. My children had a great year. Thank you for showing the stuff that this district is made of. I've built community trust the last 13 months, and I will focus on an evidence-based plan for safe, equitable education moving forward. But that is not why I am running. The people of Port Washington are hungry for change. The community wants this district to excel. We need to refocus on the fundamental skills like writing, like science, like math, and now coding. But that is often not the board's priority. We need to catch up to other top districts with new opportunities like high school internships, elementary school clubs, and we need to reevaluate Weber's core extension. We need more creativity. We need increased investment. Each budget season, I watch as the board trades off funding Ag-8 for special education programs, for extracurricular activities, for funding substitutes and paraprofessionals. I truly believe that with a little work and creativity, we can have them all. Sometimes it just takes a fresh set of eyes and a new perspective. Some think this is impossible. I ask for your vote and a little faith that if Roslyn, Great Neck, and Manhasset can do it, Port Washington can do it better. No offense, Mrs. Tupkin.
Thank you. Mr. Greenstein, Stein.
It's whatever's fine. I would like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this event. I am a proud member. Thank you to my colleagues and opponents for joining me. And most of all, thanks to you, the audience and the voters. Local elections are truly democracy at work. My name is Larry Greenstein, and I've served the people and the students of Port Washington for almost 2 decades. First as the president of SEPTA, the Special Education PTA, and since 2005 as a member of the Board of Education. Last year, I was elected by the Boards of Education of Nassau County to join the board of Nassau BOCES, where I advocate for all the children in Nassau County. I am also the Secretary Treasurer of the Nassau-Suffolk School Boards Association, where I network with colleagues from all over the island. I've worked with school boards across the state and across the country to strongly advocate for policies and funding that helps our students and our district. As a member of the Legislative Task Force, I was part of the effort that garnered Port Washington one of the highest percentage increases in foundation aid in Nassau County. I've worked with hundreds of school board members over my career, and what stands out is this: the worst quality a school board member can have is hubris. The best school board members know that they do not have all the answers. They look at the data and they hear from all sides. Education is a collaborative effort, and everyone's needs must be respected, not just the loudest. A good school board member works with their colleagues and superintendent to carefully thread the needle to support all learners and the community as a whole. As a parent of 2 children who were educated in the Port schools and graduated from Schreiber High School, I understand how the system works from pre-K through high school, from special ed to gifted ed to career and technical ed. Effective board members can't have tunnel vision. They can't operate solely from the experience of their children and their friends. They can't dictate and demand. Effective board members know the importance of collaboration. They know the fiscal realities, and they know the needs of the staff, and they understand the needs of the students.
Okay.
This year, it's like I lost my place. This year, we have embarked on many important initiatives in collaboration with all of the stakeholder groups. We're working with NYU on equity and diversity so that we can level the playing field and have a staff that more closely represents our community. We are expanding social and emotional supports. We are also engaged in refining our district mission and vision and developing the profile of a graduate. Our staff has learned a lot from the pandemic, and it will impact our classrooms going forward. If you believe in our mission of providing a quality education for all students, one that fosters a love of learning, acceptance of differing viewpoints, and an understanding of their role in the community, the country, and the planet, then I ask for your vote. Experience matters. Go with the people who know.
Thank you. And we will now hear from Ms. Johnson. Unmute yourself and you can start it again. We'll
Okay,
start the timing now.
Okay. Good evening, and thank you to the League for hosting this event. My family and friends ask, after 9 years of being on the board and the nonstop pace of the last 15 months, why are you doing this again? The answer is simple. In this unprecedented time of COVID, experienced leadership is critical. It appears that we're turning the corner, but it is now that the real work must continue. It will take trustees with deep knowledge of the district and board process to lead us forward to set goals and make policies, not just one grade level. Sorry, I've lost my place for a sec. That policies that consider the instructional and emotional needs of all students, not just one grade level or one special group. We need trustees that represent all stakeholders, including those without direct ties to our district. Port became my family's home in 2002. I have 3 children, Adam is a medical doctor. Rachel works for a nonprofit. And Izzy, 20 years old, is a sophomore in college who's been studying remotely since the pandemic started. They went to our schools and had very different needs, which has contributed to my perspective and commitment to advocate for all students. I've been a board member since 2012. Amongst so many things that I'm proud of, we facilitated the passage of the 2015 facilities bond, oversaw the introduction of programs at the elementary level that ensure consistency going forward, continued to improve communication with all stakeholders, and last year transformed us into a one-to-one district, providing devices and Wi-Fi access to all students and working towards closing that technology gap that we're aware of. Most recently, I was instrumental in initiating our partnership with NYU's Innovations in Equity and Social Change and our Vision and Mission task force that will help set the district's direction for everyone's kids. I'm also on the team that is expanding the Ruler program, which is an emotion science training, which is going to be in all schools eventually. And I also co-chair the diversity committee. I've had a unique career path. I started as a registered nurse, went to law school, and worked at several large firms for 16 years until I stopped when my third child was born. I co-wrote 2 books with my husband, and now I'm practicing law pro bono here in Port. I'm asking for your vote because we need experience, perspective, passion for all students and stakeholders, now more than ever. We need board members who can listen to our community and work with our administrators and make tough decisions, knowing that there are no easy answers and no quick fixes. My only
Oh, time is up. I'm sorry. Ms. Melkonian.
Good evening. My name is Nanette Melkonian. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for the invitation to this event, and thank you to those who are watching. Prior to raising my family, I was an elementary educator in the public schools and a special educator at the elementary, secondary, and post-secondary level. My classroom experience involved a range of diverse populations needing a variety of services, including regular classroom, inclusion, secondary level resource room, and support services for college students. My family began our journey through the Port Washington schools in 2004. Since then, my 3 children have attended all 3 levels of our schools as 3 individual learners. Through them, I have gained an understanding of the strengths and weaknesses of the many programs that our schools offer. My volunteer experience began as an educator in the outreach program at the Parent Resource Center, a program designed to serve Port Washington's families in need of economic assistance, and then as a member of the Parent Education Committee with the Guggenheim HSA. This was the beginning of my work to enhance parent engagement and education, as research shows a direct link between student success and the parent-school partnership. In 2015, I grew concerned about state and national policies that placed an undue emphasis on high-stakes testing rather than educational best practices. As these policies had a detrimental impact on all students, particularly those with special needs and English language learners, as well as classroom teachers, I joined forces with 3 other parent leaders to establish Port Washington Advocates for Public Education, a grassroots community group dedicated to researching and providing information on education issues relevant to all students. I continue my advocacy today. I am a member of the district's Vision and Mission Committee and currently in my 3rd year as co-president of Ag8. While in that role with a focus on curriculum and instruction, I have brought changes that impact all children through increased staffing for enrichment for all K-6 students, an analysis of our homework policy for all students K-12, and a review of Schreiber Honors Projects and the Weber Core Extension Program. Throughout my years in the Port schools, I have established a deep reach into the district's diverse community of learners through relationships built on trust while listening, learning, and challenging the status quo. I have built consensus through researching and understanding the issues facing our schools. My advocacy work has enhanced professional development, improved access to interpretation at parent meetings, and strengthened parent engagement with the school district on educational issues important to all children. What I am most proud of, however, is that I didn't do any of this alone. Following my teaching instincts, I asked questions, established trust, engaged with the community and the district, and through partnership and collaboration was able to arrive at solutions and make change. We are at a pivotal moment in our district. The safe reopening of our schools is of paramount importance. I have and will continue to advocate for better communication, educational excellence, and a focus on the whole child.
Thank you. Mr. Renna.
Good evening. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for setting up this forum to introduce the candidates to the community. I am Justin Renna, and I'm running for the school board. I live in Manor Haven with my wife, Randy, and my two kids, Leah, a rising sixth grader, and Jackson, a second grader at Manor Haven. I am a territory sales manager for the world's largest HVAC manufacturer. Many of you know me as Coach Justin. I'm a full-time coach, coaching both football and track and field at the high school level, as well as spending countless hours at Lions Field, coaching any number of sports. I'm also a board member of the PYA. Like many parents, I took for granted what the BOE and school district did on a daily basis. I was an uninformed parent who just went with the flow. That all changed when COVID-19 struck. I started attending and listening to all of the public interactions of the school. I could vividly remember the night when I decided to make a stand. I was coaching a girls' softball game at Lions Field, and Dr. Hines announced the hybrid pivot for elementary schools. Within 24 hours, alongside my wife, Randy, Adam Smith, Adam Block, and others, we formed 5 Days for Port and immediately went into action. We rallied, spoke, and communicated with members of the community and worked together to have our voices heard. From that point, people asked me if I was going to run for a seat on the BOE, and honestly, I was still unsure. However, as more and more went on this year, I realized Port Washington needed a new voice. For the past 17 years, I have worked directly with elementary and secondary school-age children and hear what their needs and wants are. As a coach, I speak to parents constantly about the success of their children, both on and off the field. What I would bring to the board is communication. I want to hear from parents and students as to what they want. I want the teachers, who do an outstanding job in this town, to feel confident and safe in what they are provided on a daily basis. Am I the perfect candidate? Not at all. There is going to be a lot of learning on the job if elected, but I am up for it. What I will tell you is this, that I will be available to speak with you, answer your questions, and listen to what you want and need. So on May 18th, vote yes for this budget and vote for Justin Renna. And while you were there, give a vote to my friends Adam and Adam. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Adam Smith, and I would like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum and allowing us the opportunity to speak to the community. I am running for school board trustee because we deserve a more proactive board that prioritizes and delivers educational excellence. I've been a proud Port Washington resident for nearly a decade. My parents had previously relocated here, and my wife Jenny and I immediately fell in love with the community. We have one child attending Guggenheim, one a rising kindergartner, and a third a year behind. So we are deeply invested in the future of our community and our schools. Families with children in the district can fully relate to the frustration felt with the district's lack of timely communication, inequitable policies, inability to be simultaneously proactive and reactive, and overall indecisiveness during these last 14 months. For me, this frustration fueled a desire to take action for my family, for all of our students, and for this community we care so much about. We need decisive, informed, and highly adaptive leadership to navigate our future. I've spent the past 16 years as a real estate professional successfully managing high-stakes projects which rely on thoughtful vision and planning, coupled with quick and decisive action to overcome the challenges that surfaced almost daily in my profession. My executive experience in business, along with my skills developed and refined as a lay leader at a local religious institution, are the management and leadership skills the board needs to be more effective. During my tenure on the board of my synagogue, I spearheaded the implementation of physical security measures, secured federal funding, instituted an emergency operations plan, and most recently guided our COVID response team through building closures and reopenings. I was also instrumental in ensuring a strong virtual presence for our congregation and preschool since the very first days of the lockdowns. One of the major draws of Port Washington is our schools. Port Washington schools have always provided a high-quality education that emanates from our dedicated teachers, teachers' assistants, and other staff. Using the high school as a benchmark, we boast a 95% graduation rate, a 75% AP participation rate, and commendable academic proficiency, all within a vibrant and diverse community. But at the same time, in many ways, we are failing our students. Our 95% graduation rate ranks us only 268th in New York State. And according to US News and World Reports, our national rankings are trending downward. Schreiber's underperforming all of our North Shore neighbors in national ranking and reputation. Anecdotally, we are already seeing the effects of this on college recruiting. I don't see this as a focus in any school board meetings. The district needs board transparency and accountability for the performance of our district and a feedback loop to gain better insight into the concerns of both parents as well as all stakeholders in the community. With transparent reporting and an effective feedback loop, our school board will be set to reverse this decline and grow to excel compared to our neighboring towns. I am committed to working with all stakeholders to ensure the school district is the best that it can be. And I ask that May 18th, you give me your trust and your vote. And while you're there, vote for my friends, Adam Block and Justin Renna.
Thank you. Ms. Weisberg.
Good evening, and thank you everyone, the League of Women Voters and all of the audience out there for taking the time to attend this important event and for taking the time to host it. For those of you who don't know me, I'll take some time to introduce myself. I began my interest in education way back in my elementary school days when I was assigned to tutor a special education student in a self-contained class. That began a love for teaching and learning that has continued my entire life. I spent my career years before my children were born teaching in a school for autistic children. I learned very early on in my life how difficult it is to move the mountain of education bureaucracy as we were using this new experimental form of teaching called ABA, a practice not yet accepted or funded by the education mainstream. Without getting into the weeds, ABA is something that is standard practice today and funded in ways I never imagined possible. I'm extremely proud of that work and like to think I played a small role in ensuring that students were educated in a modality that met their needs and ensures that they reach their potential. When I had my own children, I left my career primarily for financial reasons, and I began a journey of involvement with the Port Washington School District. As a preschool parent, I remember the advocacy work for the bond necessary to reopen Salem, expand our middle and high school, and provide other desperately needed work in our facilities in response to a growing population here. I remember the work of the parent volunteers in the district who reached out to preschool families as that redistricting was happening. When my oldest child entered kindergarten at Salem, the year Salem opened, I was a regular face at the HSA meetings and an active volunteer. I met and connected with parents in the special education PTA and offered my assistance to parents who were struggling to understand how that system works and how best to have their child's needs met. My active advocacy in our school district has continued throughout my children's years in school. I stepped into a leadership role serving as the president of the Weber HSA. I was on the board of the Viking Sports Foundation. I was involved with the Ed Foundation, helped to organize and work at fundraisers for Hearts, attended many SEPTA board meetings, continued attending HSA meetings for all of the schools my children attended, and I served for 9 years as a coach at PYA, coaching girls lacrosse and girls field hockey, and a little bit of softball, I think, back then. I sat on the community bond committee for the 2015 bond and played an active role working collaboratively with the Board of Education to determine the needs of the district. In my other volunteer world here in Port Washington, I serve as a member of Fire Medic Company No. 1 in the Port Washington Fire Department. I have been doing that throughout the COVID pandemic. I have been one of the emergency responders responding to this COVID pandemic. I have been on the back of an ambulance throughout the time, and I can tell you that I have learned a great deal through that. What I know for sure is that experience matters, and I hope you will vote for experience.
Thank you. Okay, we will now proceed to the first question, and it is a budget question. Do you support the proposed budget? Where do you think it could be improved? Do you support piercing the cap? And the first respondent will be Dr. Block.
So yes, I will vote for the budget. I encourage all of you to vote for the budget. I have always voted for the budget and I will continue to vote for the budget. So yes, I absolutely support the budget. The budget is absolutely essential for our kids. What I do want to talk about in terms of the budget is that we have a legal cap. It is what it is. And while I support potentially raising that cap or eliminating it legally, I think we have options. I don't want to wait for us to eliminate the cap and wait for Albany to act. I would like to think about ways that we can earn more money for our school district. So one example of a way that we can earn money for our school district is by opening up additional daycare programs through the school district and have them funded. In other words, charge people. The people that would enter into these programs would actually pay a lot less than they would for their nannies or other childcare programs, and it would be a funding stream for the school district. Now, what I'll say is that there's an opportunity here, and I think we need to get to yes on this.
Thank you. Mr. Greenstein.
I support the budget. I'm proud of the budget. We brought in budgets under the cap every year. We actually do invest $3,000 less per student than our neighbors do, which is one of the reasons they can do some things that we can't. We've always been a fiscally prudent district. I have in the past advocated for piercing the cap and probably will again. I don't think this is quite the year to do it, but I do think it is going to be one of our options. We've looked at a lot of other funding streams. The cost of a school district providing daycare services is much higher than the cost of anybody else providing daycare services. So we would actually be the highest cost provider, not the lowest. And there are certain limitations and rules that you have to do in order to do those things, which are a lot more complicated than they sound.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. I absolutely support our 21-22 budget. We spent a lot of time with it. As it turns out, it is pretty much our programming will be very similar to what it was for the 1920 year prior to COVID. There are some unknowns, but as it stands now, if we go back all in, school will look like it did in 1920. I do not support piercing the cap. I have never voted for, well, we have never pierced the cap during my tenure on the board, and I do not support it now. I certainly don't support it now. I think this community would not be able to sustain piercing the cap. We have a lot of people who don't have ties to the school, who are living on fixed incomes, and I don't see that happening anytime soon. On the other hand, due to the hard work of the legislative task force, of which I am a part, which is one of the board task forces, and as I think Mr. Greenstein mentioned before, we have been selected to be one of the districts that are getting one of the largest increases rather in our foundation aid. So we got $1.5 million extra over what we anticipated getting this year in foundation aid from the state. And we expect that number will go up over the next couple of years. Is that what was promised? So we will have more money to do more of the programming we'd like to do, but I don't see doing it through piercing the cap. And I'm very proud of this budget.
Thank you. Ms. Melkonian.
I support this year's budget wholeheartedly. I would like to, you asked about improvements. I would like to consider going forward an increase in the full complement of our PEP teachers. We currently are still down one. I would like to see potentially a return of our community liaison for our English language learners. I would like to see our inclusion programs return to their full strength for our special needs students. I would like to see a focus on professional development in terms of equity and school culture, as well as programming to help our mainstream teachers more ably serve our special needs and ENL populations. I would also like to see a focus on social and emotional learning. And I would like to focus on making sure that we receive our proper foundation aid and to see the formula modified to better reflect our community.
Thank you. Mr. Renna.
Thank you. I 100% support this year's budget. I think the budget this year is super important, as if we are going to return to an all-in nature in the fall for all of our schools, the children need everything possible to succeed. There is going to be a great unknown moving forward, as COVID is not going anywhere yet. So I think this year's budget is a must. As far as piercing the cap, I don't think this year would be the year to do it. However, I'm not opposed to it in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Smith.
Hi. So like everybody else, I support the budget this year, and I certainly would advocate for everybody in Port Washington to vote for it. Going into a contingency this year would absolutely be disastrous for the district, coming out of COVID and not getting the increase that obviously has already been budgeted for next year. But I don't want to speak in terms of, do I support the budget and, do I support piercing the tax cap? What I think we need to look at is we need to look at the entire budget of the district from top to bottom. We need to have a highly collaborative review of the curriculum and the offering of the budget with the entire community, parents, teachers, all educators, recent graduates, parents who are thinking about moving to the district. What do they want to see? What do they expect from the school districts? And we need to figure out over a several year period how we can restore excellency to this district for all students at every level, from every background. Every student should get what they need living in Port Washington. And I think that saying we have the same programming as last year and we stayed below the cap is not how I would answer the question. I would say, yes, vote for the budget, but we need to figure out what this district needs, and then we need to figure out what it's going to take to pay for it and present that to the community and hope that they would support excellent schools in Port Washington.
Thank you. Ms. Weisberg.
Thank you, Judy. As the chair of the Budget and Facilities Committee for the school district, I clearly wholeheartedly support the budget. It's one I worked pretty hard on, as I've worked hard on the last 6 budgets that we have proposed as a school board. As a 4th generation Port Washington resident, I am very leery of things like piercing the tax cap, because I am very aware of the needs of all of our community, not just those who have children in school. And so it's something that needs to be looked at very, very closely and very, very clearly. And in order to present a budget that would pierce the tax cap, it would have to be because there was a great need in the school to do so. Therefore, as Mr. Smith just said, what is really needed here is the work that we're doing right now. We as a school board have recognized, as has the superintendent, that it is necessary to look at everything that we offer and look at where we want to be in the future, which is why we have a community vision and mission committee with teachers and paraprofessionals and clerical workers and parents and all other administrators, many representatives across the community. And we are taking a very close look at where we want to be, trying to determine a vision and a mission and come up with a strategic plan for the next years. And that will help guide our budgeting as we move forward. So Mr. Smith isn't wrong in his statement. We are embarking on that journey. It was a recognized need by the school board and by the administrators, and that is going on. So I thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next question has 2 parts. For the non-incumbents, please tell us over the past year what board and committee meetings you've attended and what you've learned. And for the incumbents, please give examples of reaching out to people who are not involved in the district and what have you learned. We will begin with Mr. Greenstein.
Thank you for that question. As a longtime member of the community, I have lots of friends and neighbors who are in my generation who have had kids who have gone through the schools, very successfully in many cases, and still actually really care about our schools. And we discuss the things going on a lot, what they did then that was better, what we do now that is better. So it's not really a question of trying to reach out to everybody. We reach out to the people at Harbor Homes. We reach out to the people at Cow Bay. We reach out to the people who generally are not being heard. Those are the people who, to me, are the most important.
Ask
We reach out to the
Steph about
students.
our policy.
And because after all, it is really, they are the people who we are educating. And it's been a priority of mine, and it's been a priority of the district. It's definitely a priority of the superintendent, who was a strong believer in outreach and communication. And I'm proud of the job that I've done and we've done in that regard.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson. Ms. Johnson, please unmute. Again,
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
now. Okay.
That's a good question. I stay engaged with community members, and as Mr. Greenstein just explained, I do feel that there are certain segments in the community that we need to reach out to, especially because those are the voices that we don't frequently hear. And I have connections with people at Harbor Homes, and I have connections with people in the Latinx community and in the ENL community, which overlaps. I also was instrumental in holding our community forums that we've had recently, and had some others over the years. I'd say we had more so recently.
Read it.
I think it's more, I think it's very important to be in touch with the community. And I certainly have a lot of communication with community members as the president of the board, and I've probably responded to over 150 letters, emails just this year alone, and had conversations with people. Thank you.
Judy, you're muted.
Somebody muted me. Okay, Ms. Melkonian. And are you muting yourself when other people are speaking?
I touched it by mistake. I apologize.
Oh, okay, thank you. All right, we'll start timing now. You heard the question, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I've attended curriculum, policy, and budget meetings and the general board meetings throughout the year. I have listened to conversations in the curriculum committee about plans moving forward in terms of delivering on our vision and mission work as we move forward. There were conversations about instruction in terms of different models that can be considered through that vision and mission work, and professional development that would of course occur in that realm. And then the question of assessment, both formative within the classroom and standardized assessment and NWEAs. In terms of the budget meetings, we learned about the foundation aid being returned to or brought to the district that will fortunately be put into our reserves as we've been depleting them throughout COVID. And the board meetings have focused a great deal on our parents' concerns with reopening and the various models that we have followed throughout the year.
Thank you. Mr. Renna.
Thank you, Judy. As I said in the my opening statement, I was an uninformed resident of Fort Washington prior to COVID. Since the COVID pandemic hit and my kids were learning remotely, I decided I wanted to learn more about what was going on. So I took the time and I attended so many different Zooms for the BOE meetings, the budget meetings, curriculum meetings, and I've learned how important and how much people care about children's education in this town. The one thing that I do realize is that we need, as a board, if elected to the board, we need to listen to the residents of the town before major decisions are made, not after. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Thank you. I've had the opportunity this year because of all of the committee meetings being live broadcast on YouTube to really watch a lot of committee meetings. I've watched the Budget and Facility Committee meeting regularly, the Legislative Task Force regularly, Mission and Vision, Diversity Committee, the Policy Committee, Policy and Personnel, I believe it's called actually, and of course, all of the board meetings. And this is all for the last year. And what I've generally learned is that a lot of things are being talked about in all of those meetings that I don't hear being talked about from all of the people that I know who live in Port Washington, elementary parents, middle school parents, high school parents. I don't hear the concerns of parents about the experiences that their kids are having in the district being talked about. It seems like there's a lot of topics that are being talked about that just don't match what I perceive as the pulse of the community. I hear no talk about excellence and restoring excellence to the district. I hear no talk about our dropping rankings, and I hear no talk about. Well, I do hear certain talk about our non-graduation rate. So I think that what I've learned is that we have a board who is not connected to the pulse of the community.
Thank you. And Ms. Weisberg.
Thank you, Judy.
You're-
I would have to disagree. As a member of many volunteer organizations, I have attended Ed Foundation meetings, diversity committee meetings, board meetings for my own church organization, board meetings for the fire department, officers meetings for the fire department. Being a member of the fire department gives me access to our entire community. We have everyone as members, from those people who live in some very upper end homes in Sands Point to people who are new to our country. So I have contact, exposure, and friendships with all of them. I would also add that throughout the pandemic, I haven't been home. I have been in people's homes. I have been hearing from parents and from grandparents and from children themselves what their needs are, what their experiences have been firsthand. I have a wide reach into the community. I believe that there are many people who I have access to and conversations with, and that has continued throughout my time on the board and will continue, obviously, into the future as a longtime Port Washington resident.
Thank you. And Dr. Block.
So I've attended virtually all of the Board of Education meetings for the last, let's say, 15 or so months. What I found, though, was that they are one-way streets. And up until March of this year, even though we have had plenty of access to Zoom, I've been teaching on Zoom for years, there has been no opportunity to comment back to the board. The board has talked at us, and there's been no opportunity to comment. And Mrs. Johnson mentioned that she has responded to 150 emails this year. Just in running for board, I would say that I've responded to over 100 emails in the last month and a half. So communication is essential, and I'm not really feeling it. And I'll just give you an example of the reason that I started to get involved in this district. It goes back into when my son was in kindergarten and we had a problem in his classroom. And we did everything we were supposed to do. Number one, I joined the HSA. I eventually became treasurer. Number two, we talked to the teacher. Number three, we talked to the principal. We talked multiple times. And then we went to the board meeting. We got 15 signatures on a letter, brought it to the board. That was 3 years ago today, and we have received no response. 15 signatures of kindergartners, parents, and no response. So I think we have a major board communication problem.
Thank you. Okay, now remember, as I read the questions, I didn't write these questions. They are coming from people in the community. So the next question. As a member of the Board of Education, what would you do to advocate for working families? Would you advocate for and reallocate portions of the budget to make early morning and after-school programs possible? Would you look at the early dismissal and half days that are built into the calendar that are difficult for working parents? The first person to address that question will be Ms. Johnson. And you need to unmute.
I'm sorry, I'm so used to keeping my my mic open. I'm sorry. At
No.
Weber,
Ms. Johnson, if your house is quiet, maybe just leave it on. I mean, if you have children or dogs or,
I have a big dog who wants to come into this room, so that's why I had it off. But I apologize for that. I'll be more mindful of it. At Weber and Schreiber, there are after-school programs and before-school programs that students participate in, and they're funded by the district. They're aligned with the busing schedules. We transport kids in, home from them. And so I'm assuming this question is completely directed to the elementary school level. And for the elementary school, I assume that the questioner and the parents here know that their children can be dropped off a half an hour before school starts. At the elementary level, there have been HSAs and PTAs that have gotten very generous grants from the Ed Foundation and from Hearts, and they have had elementary programs before school and afterwards, which have been great. But typically transportation is not offered, and it prevents some of the students from participating. In addition, in order for the district to do what's being asked, it would have to be available to all students and to all families, unlike the grants that have been so wonderful. The administration would have to consider other needs and wants in the district if they were to go this route. They'd have to consider staffing and teacher contracts, the cost of the staffing, equity, as I mentioned before, and I understand very much what it's like to be a working parent and to have students in school, because I was one. But I would say that it still has to be available to all students, including transportation home. And that would be, it's not something that I would rule out, but it is certainly something that would take a lot of thought and a lot of planning. And it's really not a board initiative right now.
thank you. Next, Ms. Melkonian. If you could unmute.
Sorry.
No, I know it's a problem.
Sorry. Should I begin again?
Yeah.
I understand that this is a concern. I've been speaking to families that have been asking about this as a potential. And I recognize that. And as a board member, I would like to investigate what are potential solutions to this problem. I don't know what creative solutions we could attempt. There, of course, would be budget implications if there are issues with staffing and transportation. But I would like to, at this point, without having developed a budget, I think that it's something that we can promise parents that we will look into.
Thank you. And now we'll hear from Mr. Renna.
Thank you, Judy. This is something that's near and dear to my heart. Me and my wife both work long hours. Me as a coach, I have all sorts of random hours, games, practices. So being able to provide to the families of Fort Washington who have two working parents and providing after-school activities for kids, not only is a benefit to the parents, but it's a benefit to the children. I think we as a town and a board would need to do everything possible to support our working families and provide to our kids with all sorts of activities, from art classes to music classes, sports, a lot of things that should be provided to our children at the school level. I think we need to do whatever it would take in the future to provide that, to give the best possible education and care to our kids and families in town. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Thank you. I'm going to second what my friend Justin Renna just said, which is I'm a working parent, as is my wife, and we know the struggle every day of the multitude of two working parent households in this district. I don't necessarily know that I would look for this to be something that would be paid for in the budget, as there's many other things that we have to focus on with the budget that we have. But I believe that there are creative ways to look for outside partnerships. There's already at least one or two partnerships that you can deal with right now. I believe one of them is called Kidsport, but getting into that is almost like winning the lottery, where you can get bused to an offsite daycare type of situation for elementary students. And there's no reason for that type of thing to be something that is winning the lottery. So I believe that the board should direct the administration, as I agree this is not a board issue, should direct the administration to put the thought and planning that it would take that Mrs. Johnson referred to into this issue, because this is so important for all of the parents who are working and are tax paying in this district and really need some way to have their kids taken care of after school. And I believe it's something that could be looked at positively, and we could find additional opportunities like sports and clubs and research opportunities and other learning opportunities that could be happening and other ways to give enrichment to the students during this time.
Thank you. Ms. Weisberg.
Thank you again, Judy. A very quick apology. I got stuck on a late call and ended up having to join the Zoom at the firehouse. So if you hear loud noises behind me, I apologize. There's nothing I can do to shut the sirens off. They just stay on. That said, I can't agree more with what everybody here said. It is difficult to be a working parent, and certainly to continue to look for creative ways to help our working parents is definitely something that we would move forward and do. There are a million restraints as far as us offering programs as a school district, but with good fortune in the COVID world, our programs that are operated in our school buildings through our partners will be back next year. So we had a discussion today at the budget and facilities meeting about bringing those programs back next year. So there will be a before and after school programs offered back in our buildings in town. So that'll hopefully help alleviate some of those issues, and we can certainly continue to look forward. If your question is, would I take money out of this current budget to provide that? My gut is to say that no. The answer to that is no. We needed every penny of the money that's in this budget to educate the students in the way that we need to educate them. And so that money is being spent appropriately. But if we continue to see increased foundation aid, it's a totally different conversation that we could continue to have.
Thank you. Who's next? Dr. Block.
So this is definitely a priority of mine. My wife and I both work, often long hours. We've had trouble finding childcare. We've had to hustle from all parts of really the New York City area to try to get our kids under certain circumstances, and it has been really hard. I think that if the board had prioritized this, well, we would have seen some action on it, but I don't think they've had plenty of time to prioritize this, and they haven't. So even just opening up schools another 30 minutes earlier and having a supervised place for kids can make a world of difference to a parent that's trying to make a train at 7:36 in the morning after the lots fill up. And also what we see is that in places like Scarsdale and Westchester, there are 20 after-school activities at elementary schools, 20. I know this because I worked on the Salem HSA, and we increased the number of after-school activities at Salem from 0 to 1. Now, these after-school activities aren't just additional curricular opportunities for the students. They are helpful to the parents as well, because they mean that the parents, instead of having to drive at 3 o'clock and pick up their kid and then go drive them someplace else, they can just leave their kid at school to get this wonderful opportunity and then pick them up later on, which is better for parents. In addition, we hear lots of talk about equity. What most parents do is they drive them to other opportunities that cost much more. In-school opportunities are generally cheaper. And so I think this is a big equity building opportunity as well.
Thank you. Next question.
Wait, do I get to go?
I'm sorry.
Hey, that's okay. It would have been a good question to duck, right? So this goes back to our vision and mission. What is the mission of the school district? What is our vision? What is it that we want to be for the community? What is that we want to be for our students and everything else? That is the work that's ongoing. The reality is we spend less money than Scarsdale. The reality is we have a fixed amount of money coming in, and 80% of our budget is personnel. The largest non-personnel item we have is transportation. So, putting these things in sounds great. It really does. And if we could do it, we would do it. But we then have to make the decision, if we do this for this group, what other group is going to get thrown under the bus because we're taking something away from them. Because it's a zero-sum game. You can't just go, we're going to give everything to everybody and do it under the same budget because I have a magic wand and I can tell everybody, oh, take 20% less salary and work harder, then we can do it. That is exactly what people on the outside think can be done because they don't know anything about the way schools operate.
Thank you. Next question. Please give examples of how you intend to consider and represent the best interest of all students in the district, especially when there may be views that differ from your own personal interests. And first, this time will be Ms. Melkonian. Ms. Melkonian?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
So there are many plans in my head. I would like to see a lot of consideration in terms of our special needs populations. I would like to see a return of the inclusion program, which was at all 3 levels that was cut a few years ago. I would like to see the PEP teachers at all 6 schools so that we can have enrichment for all and core group instruction. I would like to see a community liaison for our ENL populations, as well as professional development in all 3 of those areas to enhance instruction for all 3 of those communities. I would like to see attention paid to professional development in terms of school culture, both at the leadership level, at the teacher level, and at the student level.
Thank you. Mr. Renna.
Thank you. So I spend a lot of time with a lot of parents, a lot of kids in this town. Daily, I'm working with 10 to 15 kids who are at our schools. I'm at the fields talking to parents. I spend most of my time just communicating with the people of this community and learning what they are looking for. And at the end of all of this, everybody is looking for the same thing. First off, obviously getting the kids back to school, but they want equity. They want transparency. They want to make sure that they're being heard. So if I'm elected to the board, nothing's really going to change on my day-to-day. I'm still going to talk to people. I'm still going to respond to everybody. And I just think the biggest thing here is making sure that you continue to communicate with everybody in this town, not just the people who agree with you. As a coach, I disagree with so many people that I work with, but at the end of the day, we need to work together to put together the best team. And it's the same thing with a school board. You need to work together to put together the best school to bring back the excellence that Port Washington had.
Thank you. And Mr. Smith.
Thank you. I'm going to echo again what Justin just said. 2 of the taglines of our campaign have been transparency and equity. And I think that one thing that we can all agree with is that the best way to get equity in this school district is to have an excellent school district with a wide breadth of programming where every single student has their needs met. Now, I understand that we have limited funds and that we have a budget that has limits and there's only so much money coming in. But I believe that if you sit down and you work with all of the stakeholders in the community, everyone from all walks of life, you're going to find out that everybody wants the same thing, which is the best for their child. And I believe that I'm a person who can build consensus. I work with people who have different opinions every single day. And I don't think I would ever put my own personal interests in front of others. What I want is the best for this district, the best for this community, and the best for every single student in this town.
Thank you. Ms. Weisberg.
Thank you. I think, first of all, it's easy to answer when you have no personal interest, and I have no personal interest here. My last child graduated last year, and as a parent, I experienced pretty much every program that our school district has to offer. I had children in special education programs. I had children in our accelerated and enrichment programs. I had children in our athletic programs. I graduated a 3-sport athlete. I graduated a child who took the stage as a lead player in our high school musicals. I am pretty well aware of the needs across the board. I have also been attending things like diversity committee meetings for years, not recently, but for years, and have been hearing from parents and have been working hard to make changes. Anybody who has worked in the world of education and the bureaucracy that exists knows that changes are incremental, and that we have had some limits just because aid and tax levy limits have gone up and down, and at times not even been enough to cover our contractual obligations for the next year. So when we have been able to, we have been moving the district forward, and we will continue to do so. The vision and mission and strategic planning work will truly help us to target what the entire community needs and sees as the role of the district, and we look forward to continuing that work.
Thank you. Dr. Block.
So I'm looking forward to potentially having a voice on the board. And I have felt that I don't have a voice on the board at all, no matter what I do, no matter what outreach I do, I don't have a voice on the board. And I'm going to give you an example of that from just this fall. We organized, Justin, Adam, and I organized this rally to bring back all of our elementary school students. And we were able to do that. And after that, we actually had a phone call with Mrs. Johnson and with Dr. Hines. And during that phone call, we talked about some of the issues. And afterwards, what we said is we'd like Justin Renna to join to join one of the committees and be involved and have his voice, which represents 1,000 parents that have joined our Facebook group, on one of these committees. They said no. They said no, we already have a full committee. We represent 1,000 people. So what I see on this board is not an open opportunity for people that don't think like them. I see on this board a closed opportunity for only people that think like them. So how am I going to do it differently? First, I'm going to represent the people that have been voiceless. And second, I'm going to hold monthly office hours. All of the communication has been one way, the board pushing out. I want to hear from the community, so I'm going to hold monthly office hours. Dr. Hines did that. Caffeine with Mike, I thought was a great idea. And I think the board should be open to that as well. So I want to have monthly office hours for board members to chat with people in the community.
Thank you. Mr. Greenstein.
Okay. The people we hear from are a relatively small subset of the people in Port Washington who we represent. The people who are working 2 jobs, trying to just keep their heads above water, who come from cultures where they don't question authority, those are the people we don't hear from. Those are the people we reach out to try to find out what they need. Those are the people who we have to help, even though we will never hear from them. Again, often we get bogged down by the loudest voices, not the most important voices. And it's our job as a school board to find out what those voices are, to find out what those people who don't have the access to reach out, who can't get 1,000 signatures on a petition, but whose problems are just as bad or worse than those people who we do hear from. And that's been the goal of us. And that's why we have a diversity committee. And that's why we're working with NYU. And that's what I believe. And if people believe that we should not be helping those people, then please don't vote for me.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson.
I have to agree with most of what Larry just said, although I hope people vote for me and I can change their minds if they don't agree with representing the people in our community that currently don't express themselves and don't feel comfortable speaking out. And I personally, I mean, the question I think had to do with working with people that don't agree with you and going ahead with listening to people with different opinions. So I have to say, like, I have never had a personal agenda during my time at the school board. I didn't have one when my kids were here, and I don't have one now. My agenda is doing the most I can for this district and taking care of and considering the needs of 5,300 students. I do think that our mission and vision work, as well as our equity work with NYU, will very much help us hear more voices and hear voices that we don't normally hear from. I'm especially looking forward to the equity work because we are not, it's not just a question, as Mr. Smith said, of having more excellent classes and a better, I don't exactly remember how he said it, but having just, improving the quality of the education here, because we have kids that are being left behind. And that was shown in a magnified version during this COVID crisis. We have high, a 95% graduation rate.
Sorry, your time is up, but I appreciate your input. Thank you. Now, remember, this is not my wording. Is it appropriate for students to be indoctrinated to embrace radical social justice beliefs such as critical race theory within the context of their school experience? Do you believe that the Port Washington School District is systemically racist? And I will start with Mr. Renna.
Okay. So obviously that is a real hot button topic in today's world. I think one of the biggest things that we need to do as a community is just teach our children better than what we were taught and what our parents were taught and what their parents were taught about equality for everybody. I'm a huge believer that there's no one different. Big thing for me being a football coach, and if you listen to any pro football coach, they'll tell you a football team is no matter where you are in the country or the world, when you're in that locker room together, you only see one color, one race, one everything. And that's how I raised my kids. That's how I raised the kids that I work with. And I believe our teachers in this district do a very good job of teaching equality for all. And I think there is no place for racism in our schools, but I won't say that our schools are systematically racist. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Yes. So, wow, that is definitely a loaded question. I'm not super familiar with critical race theory, and I don't know the ins and outs of it. So I'm going to reserve judgment on the subject and the words that were used to describe it. But I don't certainly think that the Port Washington schools are systemically racist, and I haven't seen anything that would lead me to believe that. I've heard the things that my son has come home from school saying, and I think that the teachers have been giving them a great education and a great context about what's going on in the world. And I would personally put the trust in the teachers to figure out how to present the context of today's world to the children. I would put that trust in the parents, but I definitely don't believe that a concept like critical race theory, which I don't necessarily know or understand if it's entirely mainstream, is something that should be adopted as part of curriculum for the school district. I would say that's something I would need to research further.
Thank you. Ms. Weisberg.
Like Mr. Smith, I don't feel educated enough to comment on the critical race theory, but I will speak a little bit to the word indoctrination. I don't believe that schools should be indoctrinating children, and I don't believe that that is an attempt or a goal of any school district or any teacher. The children should be educated about all parts of our culture, all parts of our history, the good and the bad. And they should be educated in things like tolerance, in things that we I know bring to the forefront here as a school district, working with organizations and ensuring that our school district has been designated, or our schools have been designated as no place for hate and other things like that. And I do believe that the work that we're doing with the NYU equity, the equity work we're doing with NYU Metro is very critical, because it is very difficult for us to identify where those needs and gaps and issues are. And so it is really truly important that we make sure that we are being equitable, that we don't have students being left behind for reasons such as racism or other issues, language barriers, all of the issues that we see that can come from students who have not had sort of the same, for lack of a better word, Northern European upbringing in the country. I'm sitting in a room that has automatic lights and they keep going off.
Thank
I
you.
apologize.
Dr. Block.
So I think I may be the only one running that actually went to the Port Washington schools. So I'm an alumni of Guggenheim, Weber, and Schreiber. And I want to tell you about a teachable moment that, and I think we've had a lot of teachable moments in this year, and I want to commend the school that I think they've taken advantage of that. So I had a teachable moment with a teacher in 8th grade when we began the Iraq War, and the teacher basically stopped the class, it was a math class, and said, we're going to talk about the war today. And here I am many years later, thinking and talking about that. So it obviously had an impression on me. We've had multiple teachable moments like that just in the last 12 months. The first was with George Floyd. And I think that the teachers have done an excellent job in speaking about that and making the students aware of all of these things, these issues in this country. I think that January 6th, the Capitol insurrection, was yet another teachable moment. And I think that the teachers have done a great job with that. And then sadly, most recently, the swastika at Susa was another teachable moment. And I see that the administration has done a good job in teaching our students. So I think those are memorable moments and opportunities for students to really learn at the moment in time.
Thank you. Mr. Greenstein.
I'm going to go against type here and actually agree with Dr. Block. The school is a representation of our community. Our community is a representation of the country. In the work with NYU Metro, we have some graduates in it who are students of color. We have some teachers in it who are students of color. They describe the microaggressions that they've experienced. It's no more in school than anywhere else. It's probably less in school than anywhere else. But the point is, it does occur, and it is something that we really do have to work on, and we do have to look at in every action we take, every word we use, all of our language. You know, what appears innocent to us is hurtful to somebody else. And I think that, you know, I think we do a very good job, and I think with the work that NYU Metro is doing with us, I think we're going to probably be, you know, the best school district in a couple of years, because the staff has really bought into the work. They've really bought into the concept that they want to be better. The board has bought into the concept that we want to be better. The administration wants to be better. We've acknowledged this problem. We are working on it, but to say it doesn't exist would be doing a disservice to those people who are being negatively impacted by it.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson.
I completely agree with what Mr. Greenstein just said. And I want to say that I'm especially proud as being one of the people that really pushed for the NYU Metro work. And it's ongoing, and it is going to make differences. I think it'll make a difference for all of the students, not just the students of color, because this is the world that we live in. I'm not an expert on critical race theory, so I can't, go into that, but I can tell you that I've spoken to quite a number of Black and Brown students in our district, former students, some current, and parents, and there is a feeling that there's an otherness there. I don't say it's intentional on the part of the white majority, but there is an implicit bias that does occur, and that's what we're looking at, in part what we're looking at, because we want equity, and we want every child in this district to feel comfortable, and we want every family to feel comfortable that they are a part of this district. That's part of the goal of the NYU Metro work, and I think it's critical that it's carried on with the board members that we have now, because we have the investment in it.
Thank you. And Ms. Melkonian.
Thank you. I do not necessarily believe our district is systemically racist, of course. However, I would like to see the results of the NYU Metro data and to see if we can make improvements in our diversity in hiring, to see if we can make improvements to our curriculum that is more reflective of our community, to enhance professional development, to improve our school culture, to look at access to programming and whether or not we are doing all that we can to have diverse classrooms, and to also look at our discipline policy and whether or not there are areas in that we can improve.
Thank you. And we will go to another question, budget again. With the large increase in funds coming this year from the state, why is another increase in the budget requested? And what will each candidate promise to do to hold costs down? And we begin with Mr. Smith.
Great. Well, I think that there's been many reasons explained on previous committee and Board of Ed meetings why the money that came in is not necessarily something that should be tied to a return to the taxpayers this year. Some of it has requirements of that it be spent in the future on certain items. Some of it is going back to reserve. Some of it is for reimbursable expenses. So there's not necessarily an opportunity here to reduce the budget for this year. But what I will say is that I don't think that people in Port Washington should be thinking in terms of reducing the budget or saving money. I think what people in Port Washington should be focused on is bang for the buck. And Port Washington School Board needs to be highly transparent with metrics that are regularly sent and shown to the community how the board is being stewards and taking care of the taxpayers' dollars and making sure that the taxpayer is getting the bang for the buck for every dollar that's spent. We have high taxes in Port Washington for the schools. We have a high school budget, 100 million, I think it's 160 million some odd dollars this year. And we need to make sure that every single one of those dollars is spent on something that's giving a return on investment to the students in this community.
Thank you. Ms. Weisberg.
Thank you again, Judy. Speaking as somebody who has been sitting again on the Budget and Facilities Committee for years, first of all, everything that Mr. Smith said is correct. We were taking $2 million out of reserves this year. The $1.5 million additional that's coming in does not even cover what we were pulling from our reserve, our savings account, to cover the budget this year. And that is to return what we believe is a very, very necessary program back to our kids. Critical. We could not make, we did not feel in good conscience that we could make cuts to that programming, which is why we were taking the 2 million out before we knew the 1.5 million was coming, or that additional money was coming in. That said, I believe that Port Washington does get an excellent bang for the buck. For anybody who pays attention to school budgets in Nassau County, particularly the North Shore of Nassau County, you would know that of our 12 neighboring school districts, we are either the lowest or the second lowest for the last 10 plus years that I've been really paying attention to school budgets in per student expenditures. So the $160 million sounds like a lot, but it's not as much as Great Neck is spending per student, not even close. So, for some of those school districts, we are more than $10,000 a student off. So I believe we are delivering an excellent education for the money that's being spent here. And I believe that we as a board have in the past and will continue, if the board stays the same, to look for ways to continue to deliver that excellent education and improve it.
Thank you. Dr. Block.
So my training is as an economist, and what economists believe is generally simple, which is that you save in good times and you spend in bad times. These are bad times. And so what the school district needs to just operate general in-person school is more costly than what it needs in general good times. So I am in favor of spending the money. Anybody that has picked up their child and sees the complicated procedures that have to go on to pick up their child at school knows that it just costs more because you have more labor expenses, and that is totally fine. So I'm very happy that we're handling this the way that we're handling it, by spending a little bit more money in these times of COVID.
Thank you. Mr. Greenstein.
This would be a kumbaya moment. So yeah, I mean, I agree with everything everybody said, but I in terms of bang for the buck, I think we do need to look. We are looking deeper into our data, And again, it all ties into our vision and mission, and it all ties into the work we're doing with NYU Metro. Our 95% graduation rate is not necessarily the same across all subgroups. It is our goal to make sure that all subgroups have the same opportunities and the same success. So we have to look at how it is we measure our success, how it is we get we keep people engaged in their education, how we make them want to continue and want to succeed and want to do well, and give them the resources to do that. And that's part of the work we're looking at in a vision and mission, and that's part of the work that we're looking at in with NYU Metro. And yes, it's probably going to cost money, and yes, it's probably going to have to come from somewhere, but it's something that I think we really have an obligation to do, and I'm looking forward to continuing on with that work.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. I just want to say that, you know, it looks like we got a lot of extra money, but we spent a lot of extra money on our COVID expenses. And as I think Ms. Weisberg said before, you know, we took money out of reserves to balance the budget, and the $1.5 million additional from the state, additional for what we anticipated, is going back into reserves and can be used later on. But you need to have a certain amount of reserves in order to be out of a fiscal concern, and you can't have over a certain amount either, but we're far from reaching that maximum. As far as the federal money that we got, it was reported as $4 million or 4.1, but it's actually 3.5 because the state takes 10%. That money is almost like a title grant and is earmarked for COVID recovery, though, which is great. So we do have that money, but it needs to be spread over 3 years, and it will cover COVID learning loss. We're using it for programs this summer. We're using it for additional supports for the kids, all the kids, and especially the kids that had the most severe difficulties during COVID. And it will also be used for social and emotional repair or help to improve the mental health of the kids who have suffered so much during this COVID loss. So it's not, I think we need every penny that we got, and we are using it wisely. And as far as the budget, I think we've been transparent. There's, I don't want to get into more than that.
Thank you very much for respecting our timer. Ms. Melkonian.
Thank you. I fully respect our taxpayers and the needs of our students, and understand that there is a balance that needs to be struck in that every year as we develop our budget. And however, the monies that are being returned to our reserves are important to be placed there to recover from all of the costs associated with COVID. And it also prevents us from being designated as within fiscal stress if those reserves aren't maintained at a proper level. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Renna.
Yes, so I agree with both Adam Block and Adam Smith on this. I think it's important to make sure we provide our students everything that they need to excel in school. I think that the money was spent out of necessity to allow our children to get back into school, so we need to replenish that money. The one thing I do want to mention is it's twice tonight that I've heard that we spend less money per kid in our district than our neighboring schools, and it's touted as a good thing. However, in the latest rankings that came out, most of those neighboring schools' rankings have gone up while ours has gone down. So I think we need to really focus on providing more for our children and more educational needs for our children to succeed, so our rankings and the education our kids deserve becomes better. Working at one of those nearby districts, I see what they are able to provide to their children. And I feel like we need to get in line with our neighboring North Shore districts. Thank you.
Thank you. There have been a couple of questions that I'm combining here, but people are asking to see more equity in the hiring process of administration and staff. And board aren't hired, but this person included board. And then another person said, do you support hiring diverse teachers? So if you could combine that and say what you would do to increase diversity among teachers and staff and administrators, please. And the first person will be Ms. Weisberg.
Thank you again, Judy. I absolutely support increasing the diversity amongst our staff, our teachers, our administrators. There were many things we were discussing prior to COVID. We had started looking into or had been looking at job fairs and going to places where perhaps we wouldn't be finding our typical candidates that we had been advertising before. A lot of this work had been begun. COVID actually obviously made things more difficult, but I am very proud of the fact that our next two administrators are from diverse backgrounds. I don't know how many of them have been voted on publicly yet. So I'm not going to mention who they are and for what positions they are, because I honestly just don't remember what has been publicized yet. However, we worked very hard, and that was a goal of the school board, was to hire more diverse staff and candidates. And it's been a goal of the school board for a few years. I believe one of the reasons why we hired this particular superintendent, because, you know, that was one of the things that we did get to do that would affect this, was because it is one of his goals as well. And so it's something that I look forward to being able to continue to work with Dr. Hines, because he is clearly making this a priority and digging deep into his background and his connections to help us find those very well qualified and diverse administrators. So I'm excited about that.
Thank you. Dr. Block. Please, you're muted.
So I believe that hiring diverse staff is incredibly important. I think teachers are the trusted adults in our kids' lives outside of their parents and immediate and family members. And so I think having that represent the country a little bit better, I think is incredibly important. I think it doesn't just help those in minority communities, but it helps all of our students learn what a community should look like. So I think it's an incredibly important venture.
Thank you. Mr. Greenstein.
Okay, I agree with I agree with everything that's said. I know it was a priority when we were looking for a superintendent. It is certainly one of Dr. Hines' priorities. The board had made it very clear that we wanted to see an increase in diverse hires, and that and they should be creative in where they look for it. And we've done a lot better since then. Again, we have a whole bunch of hires that will be coming up soon on an agenda. We are looking to we're looking to have a workforce that looks a lot like our community. The importance, while it is great for everybody to have a teacher and learn all of this stuff and see the diversity, it's also important for a student to have somebody who looks like them, for them to have somebody that they feel they have something in common with, that they feel that is somebody they can aspire to be, that they can be a role model. And I'm sure Mr. Renna sees that in his sports coaching all the time. People want to have somebody that they can look up to and admire. And I think that the more similar background those people come from, the easier it is to make those connections.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson.
I echo the sentiments that were just expressed by both Larry and by Beth. And I am very proud of the fact that we have hired a superintendent who, among many other positive innovations, and I hate to call diversity hiring an innovation, so I won't, but among other things that he has done is to really listen to this board and our urging for a more diverse staff. And as Beth said a little earlier, we have done some of that already, and there is more to come because it is so important on so many levels to have diversity in the staff. And it's for the kids of color themselves. It's also for the others, for the white students and other students, because this is the world that we live in. And the Black and brown students need role models, and the white students, the Asian students, we all need to see people that look like us and realize that in so many ways we're the same, but to appreciate at the same time cultural differences.
Thank you. Let's hear from Ms. Melkonian.
Thank you. I echo a lot of the sentiments already mentioned. I have been on hiring committees in the district. I would like to see some more creativity in terms of how we pursue candidates and the appropriate outreach that can achieve a more diverse staff. I would like to see our staff be more a reflection of our community, and believe that the teachers and the children need to see teachers that look like them.
Thank you. Mr. Renna.
Yes, thank you, Judy. I agree with what has been said by most of the candidates here. I think we need to make sure that we're doing an even better job than we already are on hiring diversity. Not only for kids to see teachers that look like them, but I think it's even more important for kids to see teachers that don't look like them. And for a large part of our community, a white child sees a white teacher and they look alike. I think they need to learn that there are people of all colors, of all genders, of all backgrounds that they need to respect, listen to, and learn from. And that's only going to increase the equality that we are looking for in the world in general, but more importantly, in Port Washington. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith. You're muted.
Yep, I can't believe I did that. I'm sorry. Happens to the best of us.
Yes,
But I'm going to disagree a little bit with the rest of the pack here and say that I grew up going to a very homogeneous elementary school, and then I went to a very heterogeneous high school. And I will say that I learned so much of how the world works being in that heterogeneous situation. And I think that diversity, equity, and inclusiveness are critical life skills for all students to learn. And frankly, a big reason why my family moved to Port Washington was because I wanted to be in a diverse North Shore school district. We wanted to be on the North Shore, and I knew that Port Washington was not a homogeneous district. And that's a big part of why we lived here. And I think it's critically important that we reach out when we're hiring to try to make sure that we're getting applications from people of all walks of life. But at the end of the day, we need to hire the most qualified and best candidates, because getting the best teachers and the best teachers' assistants and the best coaches in our classrooms and on our fields and in our schools is what's going to make sure that all of our students, from the ones who are failing to the ones who are Harvard bound, are going to get the best outcomes. The best teachers we can possibly get, making sure that we draw from the widest range of applicants.
Thank you. Now we will just have a few more questions before going to closing statements. You've all shown a lot of strength and fortitude getting through this. So this question, remember, I didn't write. Do you think school board members have a duty to model civil discourse in person, on Zoom, and online? Under what circumstances would you find that you would use blocking communications? When would it be appropriate? And I know that's probably a toughie. I'll start with Dr. Block.
Sure. I mean, I think you have to separate. So I'm a policy person. I worked in Washington, D.C. on policy for many years. So I know the very big difference between having a passionate policy discussion and going after people personally. And I think that is the line that you have to draw in the sand, particularly for students to understand that difference.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Greenstein.
That's it. Policy is one thing. We can have disagreements without necessarily being disagreeable. If somebody is going to be abusive or offensive or otherwise totally inappropriate, then I do believe we have the right to say they are not going to be part of the public discourse that we are part of. We have there are certain rules of etiquette. There's certain rules of civility that we expect people to follow. And I haven't seen any situations in my years on the board where anybody has crossed that line, but there is a line that definitely could be crossed. And we do respect the differences of opinion. Again, as long as people are not being threatening, as long as they're not being abusive, as long as they're not being doing other things that are beyond our cultural norms.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson.
I have a pretty high threshold, but I have not seen a situation where I personally would block or censor anybody's voice on Zoom or social media. But I don't say that that's not possible. If somebody got very offensive or went after an individual very viciously, I mean, it gets to, it might get to a point where that was necessary. But I do think all voices need to be heard. And if somebody disagrees with me, and I've seen plenty of posts on Facebook that where someone disagrees, particularly now during these tumultuous times when, everybody has different opinions. And I think people have the right to speak out because people are frustrated. I mean, there is a line somewhere that shouldn't be crossed, but I get emails from people that are very angry and, not a personal attack so much, but an attack of sorts. But I still respond because I know that they're frustrated and I know that they're reaching out for some kind of an answer, to make some kind of connection, to know that I'm listening to them, that I hear them. So I do respond and I don't censor.
Thank you. Ms. Melkonian.
Thank you. For those that know me and those that may not, I am quite known for my priority for civil discourse. I've had many years of policy discussions and disagreements that have been nothing but respectful and conversational and focused on progress and improvement. Of course, there is a legal line of harassment that I hope I never experience. And I hope not to block anyone. I'm always interested in listening to people's opinions and needing to understand how people are feeling as a member of this community. And it would certainly be important to do that and engage as a board member. Because one of my priorities is to improve communication. So I definitely would like to be engaged with our community of families and students, but would absolutely expect respect.
Thank you. Mr. Renna.
Thank you, Judy, again. So yes, I've been a part of the culture where people want to block and censor people. And I think in this role, there is a line that I will communicate with people who disagree with me all day long. I do it at my full-time job. I do it at my coaching job. And I disagree. There are disagreements and I'll listen to everyone. But there comes a point where the disagreement turns away from just a disagreement on a topic and it turns to harassment and bullying. And that is something that as adults, we don't stand for. We teach our children not to stand for it. We teach our children not to do it. So I think there is a point where someone will cross that line from having a conversation and a disagreement to harassment and bullying. And that is something that no one in this town or any town should stand for. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Yes. To echo what some of the others have said before, civil discourse is obviously one of the cornerstones of our democracy. As an elected official, such as a board member, there would certainly be no place for censorship or blocking. And in fact, That's why I'm so thankful that Mrs. Johnson and the rest of the board have brought back public comments after them being gone for about a year on the board meetings. And that really does give all of the community the opportunity to give feedback in a live forum to the board. If I am elected to the board, I have already committed to be available to the entire community. I plan to hold a weekly Zoom forum, not weekly, take that back, a monthly Zoom forum with any other board member or administrator who would be willing to join, moderated, I believe, to make it productive, but to be available to answer questions of the community at least once a month. Now, social media, and certainly social media of a non-elected person is very different. As on Facebook or in any other forum, there are moderators on groups and pages. And if an individual is becoming a bully or non-productive, I certainly believe that it is the job of the moderators to block or remove that person in order to make sure that the dialogue stays productive. That's why in all of the Port Washington groups, all of the moderators regularly shut down posts, regularly turn off commenting, sometimes even delete posts when a discussion gets out of hand. So I think that there's a balance of making sure that conversation stays productive and that conversation is allowed to thrive and that we have an open discourse.
Thank you. Ms. Weisberg.
Thank you, Judy. So of course, I do believe every voice needs to be heard. That is simply, it can't be more clear. It's critically important as an elected official that you hear from anybody who chooses to hear from you. We read emails as a board on a daily basis that are sometimes very painful, but we read them, and Ms. Johnson, and sometimes with the help of some other board members, responds to the best of our ability with the understanding that people are upset. That said, our community member reached out to me today about this very topic, upset that she felt she was being blocked from some candidate pages on Facebook, which is obviously, candidates who are not elected officials or candidates who are elected officials on social media clearly have the ability to do what they want with their own Facebook pages. As Mr. Smith said, those are, that they can be moderated, and people have the right to moderate them. However, I do think it is always better to not go that route. If you want to shut down a post because the comments have gotten out of control, that would be a better choice, in my opinion, than simply blocking somebody's ability to continue to engage. So that's it in a nutshell. We know how to. Having gone through the COVID year as a school board member, I think that there isn't much I couldn't and wouldn't hear these days.
Okay, thank you. I guess this will be the last two questions before closing statements. This week, 2 large swastikas were painted on the front and exterior facades of Sousa Elementary School. As a school board member, what would you do to combat this situation? How would you encourage the school district to deal with hate crimes specifically? And the first to answer would be Mr. Greenstein.
Okay, thanks. Well, this is a very, very timely and a very good question. I think what we need to do is, again, foster a sense of community, foster the sense that people can be different, people can disagree, and people, have to learn to respect each other. I do think in a case like this, it's important to know not only what was done, but why it was done. Was this somebody crying out for help? Was this somebody making an anti-Semitic statement? What was this? We now know we now think we know who did it. Of course, until they're convicted by a court of law, they haven't done it. But so one of the things that the school district did is reached out to the perpetrator as well as to the victims, reached out to the family because the family is suffering. We've sent, at Sousa, we've done a lot of outreach. The counselors have been giving newsletters, and we've been using Ruler. We've been looking at this, building the diversity and the strength. And again, it's all going to tie into NYU Metro and all of the work we're doing to try to combat this on an institutional level.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
I think there's two pieces to this. One is the perpetrator, who I understand was the alleged perpetrator, I should say, who was caught. And what, that's one piece, and what their motivation was. And are they somebody who didn't know what they were doing, or somebody who has like deep-seated hate and, and was motivated by that. But regardless, the action that they did is hate speech. And that impacted our community tremendously. It impacted our Jewish community, and it impacted our not Jewish community, because we are united in this. And what the schools have done, at the superintendent's urging and with the complete support of the board, each school has done quite a bit of outreach already. And what's today is Thursday, it happened Sunday night. So in the last 4 days, there's been a lot of outreach to the students, because the students know about it, and they're very frightened. And of course we understand that. And we need to teach them that this happens, but to understand that this is not the world that we want them to grow up with, and give them a chance though to express their fears. And many of them are fearful because of this episode. I think the district is doing a tremendous job in working with the kids at all levels. And I'm talking about elementary, middle, and Schreiber, to deal with this horrific event. And it was a horrific event.
Thank you. Ms. Melkonian.
Thank you. Of course, these are very, very sad events that have impacted our students and our families. And it's created a fear level that is unfortunate and painful. I would like to see more of our robust work in the Holocaust Center work that we have, that we use in the district, and the Anti-Defamation League programming that we have in the district, as well as the social emotional programming that we have through Ruler at the elementaries, or not all of the elementaries, I believe, some of them, and Olveus at Weber. These approaches can be enhanced and used as tools to address how our students are feeling, how our staff is feeling, and how our families are feeling.
Thank you. Mr. Renna.
Yes. So obviously this event is horrific and has no place in any town at this time, in this time. This is a teachable moment to our children, and I do commend Dr. Hines and the schools for really stepping forward with this very quickly and strongly. I know my daughter came home from school and she talked to me about it before I even had a chance to talk to her about it. And it made the conversation at home as a parent a little bit easier, because when the schools take this chance to teach the children, they'll listen, like most kids, they'll listen to their teachers way more than they'll listen to their parents. It's just natural. So I think the schools and the administration did a really good job on this. I think this could lead to more teachable moments in the school, and being proactive in these teachable moments using real life scenarios, maybe not only in Port Washington, but the George Floyd incident, all the other incidents that have happened in the past year, including COVID, could be this. These are teachable moments to our kids, and we need to continue to have teachable moments moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Smith.
Thank you. So this incident is particularly, I guess, near to me, as I was the founder and I chair the Emergency Preparedness Committee at a local synagogue, which unfortunately was founded in response to the Pittsburgh and California synagogue terror attacks over the last few years. And on Sunday night, I was actually immediately on a Zoom call with our school directors and our rabbi and other staff to determine how we were going to assuage the fears of families who were already reaching out afraid to send their kids to preschool on Monday morning. I was personally in communication with the police department multiple times, and still am since that event happened. And so I think I really understand the fear that this event has brought to families in our community who are already, somewhat on edge about sending their kids to a Jewish preschool, just in light of the last couple of years. So I think even though I'm proud of how quickly the district and the police responded to resolve this incident, I do think it's critical that we as a country teach tolerance and understanding, not only for anti-Semitism, but all kinds of hate. And I believe it's critical that that's reinforced in Port Washington schools as we do our small part towards that national effort to end hate in this country.
Thank you. Ms. Weisberg.
Thank you. First, just going to start with echoing what everybody here said. Hate speech can't be tolerated. I am proud that the district acted quickly, cooperated with law enforcement, and ensured that the perpetrator was found, which will also help us to understand maybe some of the whys, because it's very difficult to understand the whys when you don't know who did something, because there's nobody to ask, there's nobody to talk to, there's nobody to interview. And so hopefully we will be able to learn some of the whys. That said, we should also be continuing our work with NYU Metro, our work with the Anti-Defamation League, continue to work with the No Place for Hate, continue to work with the Holocaust organization that provides services for our school district, continue our social and emotional programs like Ruler and Alveus. All of those things are going to help us get to the place that we need to be. And we've also been offered some additional help through the Nassau County Police Department and the District Attorney's Office that we will be readily taking up and addressing, because we can't take help from, we can't turn away help from any place that it might present, and anybody that's willing to offer us services and programs, we certainly should be on the lookout, because as we've all seen, our schools in our town must be no place for hate, and we must continue to ensure that we educate everybody in that.
Thank you. Dr. Block.
So I'll be brief. I thought that Dr. Hines and the Port Washington Police Department handled the unfortunate scenario incredibly well. I was really happy that I got a phone call. I thought it was an excellent use of the phone system before I had to find out about it over Facebook and through rumors. I thought they did an incredible job also, because it was on a Sunday night, making sure that the defaced property was actually refaced with fresh paint before the kids went to school. So I thought that it was handled incredibly well.
Thank you. Okay, now this will be our final question. I'm combining, we have so many really good questions that we could go on all night, but I'm sure you'd like to get some rest. So this will be a budget question and a pie in the sky question. Several people have asked about zero-based budgeting. How do you feel about that? And then, this is the fun part. If the Port Washington School District received $5 million above and beyond the budget proposed for next year, how would you spend that money to best improve K-12 education? Have fun with that. The first person will be Ms. Johnson.
I was hoping to be able to hear what some other people said first. I would have to put some of it into reserves, because I really do think we have to save for a rainy day. But I would also definitely augment the programs that we're having for our equity work, and I would use some of it to help bridge the opportunity gap by looking forward to what NYU Metro is going to come up with, because there will be programs and classes and extra supports and outreach to community members that will cost money and will take time, but this would certainly expedite it. I would work on our foreign language program. I think foreign language is essential, and I would bring foreign language to the elementary schools, because I think that is something that's been talked about since I came to the district, and we've never had the money to do that. I would improve our program for gifted and talented, and I would make it more inclusive. I think I would continue with our, make more of our programs more inclusive and robust. that are considered for the higher achievers, but I think everybody should have that opportunity for that enrichment, such as broaden the research program, because I know that the kids that do research, like my own daughter did, went to college and people would ask her to help with their research work because she went through the research program. So I think that's something that should be offered to more people.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Melkonian.
That was not enough time to make my list. It's like Christmas. I have lots of ways that I could easily go through $5 million. I, of course, am most concerned at this immediate moment with the pandemic needs in terms of learning loss and the social emotional needs of our students coming out of this pandemic. So there is absolutely monies to be spent in that realm. AIS services can be broadened. That's academic intervention services for students at risk. I would love to see more literacy and professional development in reading instruction at the elementary level. Of course, professional development at all levels of our schools, ranging from curriculum development to understanding, having our regular ed teachers understand the varied populations that are in their classrooms. I would love to see a dual language program at the elementary. I would love to see a more robust PEP program. I would love to see elementary clubs brought back. And maybe we could have an early morning and after school daycare program.
Thank you. Mr. Renna.
$5 million just magically appears. What would I do? I mean, I'm going to go against what a lot of people think I'm going to say here. And I would invest in all student programs. I would invest in the arts. I would invest in technology for the kids. I would invest in more skill-based programs for our children, where there's a lot of children who might not succeed in academics after high school, but they could find a passion while in high school or while in middle school to do something else. I work in the air conditioning industry. They could find a passion doing that. So I think we need to offer more to all of our students at all levels, clubs. I think we need better technology for our children. I think we need to increase what they have for our teachers. And obviously, like we've stated numerous times, I think we need after school and before school programs for our elementary age children. It would ease the pain and burden on all the parents of those children in the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Yes. So first, for the zero-based budget question, I absolutely believe that we need to change from an iterative budget process to more of at least a one-time zero-based budget. We need to, as I've said before, look from the bottom up and look at every single piece of the district and see what's working. And we need to be highly transparent and highly data-driven. And we need to be willing to be flexible and change on a yearly basis or even on a less than yearly basis if the data is showing that we're throwing money in ways that it's not being effective. And as a community, we need to determine what those benchmarks are that will determine what is effective. Now, if we were to get this magical $5 million, and I assume it would be an annual continuation of $5 million and not just a one-time drop in the bucket, I think that I would focus on improving the programming just across the board. A few things that come to mind is adding coding at the middle school and possibly the elementary level, as coding is going to be so critical for our students to at all levels of the district to exceed in the future. Coding is definitely in the future. We need to, I'll agree with Mrs. Johnson and say we need to expand research opportunities from the 3 or 4 that only allow 8 or 12 kids each in the district. Every kid in the district should be allowed to have some type of research and be paired with a teacher to do a research opportunity if they want to. And the major thing I would invest in is guidance. We're very short in guidance counselors, and that's showing in our recruiting, and it showed this year and it showed last year. We're not investing in guidance. We're not sending counselors out to build relationships with top tier universities, and that's going to affect us at all levels of college admissions, and that's where I would spend the money. Thank you. I see I'm out of time.
Ms. Weisberg.
For everybody who might have been paying attention 2 years ago, we did go through a zero-based budget process. I know it was pre-COVID and pre-live streaming and pre-interest in some people that might be sitting here, but we did this as an exercise. And it didn't really change much for our budgeting, considering how much of our budget is really just already sort of contractually mandated. The vision and mission work will probably do much more to direct our budget than the zero-based budgeting exercise that we did. That said, $5 million, you know, Mr. Smith sort of hit the nail on the head for me. If it's a one-time gift, I'm not increasing programs and I'm not using it to expand things like that simply because they won't be sustainable. And so perhaps we could look at some one-time, you know, issues that would help people through post-pandemic and help improve education. But I would really be looking to expand that fund, use that money maybe in a place like Mr. Renna said, where we could offer maybe better technology education, increase and improve our auto shop tech equipment that happens to be, you know, award-winning year after year after year. If it's recurring, then everything everybody said, every program should get a boost, every student should be touched. There really is sort of no end to what we could do with $5 million additional dollars if it was a recurring expense. But if not, I'd really be looking to improve infrastructure in the school district so that we could offer more programs.
Thank you. Dr. Block.
So first, I would expand the PEP program and make sure that that was fully funded. The other thing I would do was, I'm going to agree with many of the other candidates, including Mrs. Johnson, is I would broaden the research program. I'm a graduate of the research program at Schreiber, and I'm now a professional researcher. So this is an important program that I think could touch a lot of people. I think funding aftercare is critical. So my kids, we go to Salem, and they would get bused for 25 minutes to Guggenheim several days a week. And then my wife or I would drive all the way to Guggenheim and then drive them all the way back, which ended up being an additional probably 45 minutes to an hour on the bus for them because we don't have these programs at each of the schools. I agree with Mr. Smith that guidance is incredibly important. My mother-in-law was the head of guidance at Valley Stream, and she took my wife on trips funded by the school all over the New York area to go build relationships with these admissions departments. These relationships are important to getting our kids into the schools that they want to go to. And last, the roofs in Port Washington really need a lot of help, and that is a one-time expense, but it needs to happen because what happened in Guggenheim a couple of years ago with kids going into school in wet rooms and galoshes should never happen again.
Thank you. Mr. Greenstein.
That's okay. Yeah, again, the same question everybody has, is this a one shot or ongoing? If it's a one shot, you know, certainly I would look at physical plant, I'd look at ADA access, I'd look at upgrading our equipment in our various places on things that have a useful life of well more than a year. If it is an ongoing increase of $5 million, again, there are so many things I'd look at, but I would think besides mental health, which is what everybody's discussing, I do think we need to look at our career and technical ed programs and offer more choices to more people, because as Mr. Renna said, not everybody is necessarily interested in, well, now I'm putting words in your mouth, AP physics, but you know, there are some people who might want to actually work with their hands when they get out of school. So I think we need to do that. I'd also like us to be able to get back to sending some of our students to the programs like Long Island High School for the Arts, which we tend to not do because we don't get any reimbursement for it. If we had money, we could expand programs like that. I'd also like to, see what would happen with universal pre-K. I'd like to see elementary clubs. I think probably spend $15 or $20 million already. But these are some of the things that I think we need to start looking at. And again, assess all the needs of the community and assess the which one would be the most effective and go from there.
Thank you. Okay, now it's time for your closing statements. Each candidate has 2 minutes, and we will begin with Dr. Block.
So I want to thank the League of Women Voters for having us, and Mrs. Temkin for her endurance and good spirit in hosting, and to the other candidates for their candor.
Thank you.
There's a lot of experience here. I believe there is a value to experience, but there's a value to new ideas, and this is a moment for change. I'm an active teacher. I'm teaching tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. I have children in the schools, so I see every day what is happening. Mr. Greenstein said that he proudly ignores the loudest voices. Sort of assume he's talking about me. He also said that he proudly ignored 1,000 families. I hear a lot of lip service out there to leaving kids behind, but many of the COVID policies of this board left everyone behind, nobody more than the most vulnerable students. I'm a fighter. I'm the guy who politely asks the neighbor who doesn't shovel the walk to shovel their walk. Now, you may not want to be married to me, just ask my wife, but I believe I'm the one you want fighting for your kids' education. I'm also a compromiser. I'd rather have 50% of something than 100% of nothing. I'm a team player. Otherwise, Coach Justin would have kicked me off of his team a long time ago. I also recognize that change doesn't happen immediately, so I expect to be here for a couple of terms. But then when it is my time, I'll retire. I'm a listener. Everyone that reaches out to me gets a call back or an email back on the same day. The board is the mouthpiece of the community. The board is the mouthpiece of the community to the schools. So I want to hear what the community thinks. My door will always be open. So I ask for your vote on May 18th and the vote for my friends, Justin Renna and Adam Smith. Together, we can implement new ideas to build a better Port Washington schools that we all love.
Thank you. Mr. Greenstein.
I'd like to thank everybody for a spirited discussion. I think it's always interesting. We almost found more common ground than we found disagreements, which is good for the district in that sorry, my phone just rang, which is ultimately good because I think what we're looking at is tweaking things rather than burning it to the ground and starting over. And I think probably everybody would agree with that. I do think that education is one of the most highly regulated industries in the world. And there's a lot of complexity that goes on. And again, things that often sound like the simplest thing in the world are really very, very difficult to achieve. And that doesn't mean we don't look at them. And again, it's like trying to turn a steamship, and it does take, with a tugboat, it does take a lot of effort, a lot of time, and sometimes the tide's going to just push you back. And you have to go with the flow. And the pandemic is a perfect example of that. We were on our way to do lots of really interesting things and move the district forward in a lot of positive ways. And then we had the pandemic. And ultimately, we're going to make lemonade. We're going to make lemonade out of the pandemic because we've learned a lot through it. We've learned technology. We've learned how to do more remote things. We've learned how to get to the kids. We've learned the need for more of our social and emotional programming. And so I'm looking forward to the next 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. I want to thank the League of Women Voters of Port Washington and Manhasset once again for hosting this evening. And a thank you to everybody who spent their evening watching this discussion and who shared questions, which were excellent questions. I also want to thank the 4 candidates that have chosen to step up at this time. I know how hard that can be, and I appreciate your effort. I also want to acknowledge Larry Greenstein and Beth Weisberg for their desire to continue serving on the Board of Education and serving this community that we love. We know firsthand just how taxing and how rewarding this job can be. And again, I want to say, I'm asking for your vote because we need experience, passion, and perspective for all students and stakeholders now more than ever. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you. And Ms. Melkonian.
Thank you. Thank you again to the League of Women Voters for hosting this event and to the parents and community for engaging with the issues before us. This has been a challenging year. We need to safely reopen our schools and attend to the acute learning loss and social emotional needs of our students. The federal monies designated to address these problems need to be allocated wisely with a thoughtful approach to programming and professional development. Additionally, there needs to be renewed trust between the schools and the community through receptive and open engagement with school board members, clear district communications, and improved language access for non-English speaking families. More broadly, the vision and mission work should drive educational excellence through evidence-based best practices that value a positive school culture, academics, social emotional learning, extracurricular exploration, and individual and special needs programming. While the equity and inclusion analysis underway needs to create change in curriculum, hiring, access to programming, and disciplinary policy. All of this work requires a targeted focus on professional development. Finally, the school district budget is an overarching document that reflects what a community values. While there are fixed costs in an annual budget, discretionary spending allows taxpayers to decide what to support as a community. It will be my priority to address what the community values while also recognizing the needs of our taxpayers. As we continue to navigate this public health crisis, the Board of Education needs a new trustee who will challenge the status quo. I ask the tough questions, I do my due diligence, I listen, I learn, I take action and make change. I will only engage in civil discourse. I have and will continue to deliver for all students. The term advocate derives from Latin, meaning call to one's aid. I hope to be your advocate. I am prepared to give this position what the community deserves. There are 7 well-intentioned candidates. However, I believe I am uniquely qualified as an experienced, independent choice.
Thank you, Mr. Renna.
I would also like to thank the League of Women Voters and everyone who tuned in tonight. And thank you, Judy, for putting up with all of us. And I also want to congratulate myself for not forgetting to unmute myself before I talked tonight. And I feel like that's a win in my column. Again, like I said in the beginning, am I the most qualified person to be on the BOE? Probably not. However, I'm a fighter. I'm a coach at heart and I'm a winner. I don't like falling in the rankings and the standings of anything I do. I go 100% in every aspect of my life, whether it's as a salesman, as a football coach, as a track coach, as a parent, as a husband. I give it 100% at all times. As a football coach, we have a will to win. And 3 years ago, I took a job where everyone said we couldn't win and it was impossible. Well, this weekend we're playing for a county championship. We will continue. I will bring that sort of tenacity and love of what I do to the Board of Ed, and I will fight for our children so we no longer drop in the rankings, and we will be ranked up there with the Jerichos and the Manhassets of the world. On May 18th, please vote for Coach Justin, otherwise known as Justin Renna, and also my friends Adam Block and Adam Smith. Thank you and have a wonderful night.
Thank you. And Mr. Smith.
Thank you again to the League for hosting this event. Thank you to my fellow candidates, and thank you to the audience especially for sticking through this. These forums are so important, and one of the changes I hope to make as a board member, as part of the feedback loop I've spoken earlier, is to hold regular public forums with any of my fellow trustees who are willing to participate. This way, the community can have access to and updates from the school board at all times, not just at election time. I've been a member of this community for 10 years and a district parent for the last 3, and I will be through 2035. And actually, I have 2 nieces who will be in the district for years after that. My entire family is invested in this town and in these schools. My mother was a special education teacher in Queens for 30 years. So I was raised in an environment where education was prioritized and discussed on a daily basis. While I'm not an educator myself, I have deep respect and appreciation for the hard work, love, and care about their students that teachers have every day. My first priority is providing the best education I can for all students in the district, and a large part of that is giving our teachers the tools and support they need. We have challenges in this district. We are not unique in that way. Every district has its problems and challenges. That being said, acknowledging we have problems is the first step in fixing them. Either the board is not focusing on our declining national ranking, or they are doing so privately. Either scenario is discouraging. We need to head off this downward trend now before it gets harder to control. You've heard a lot tonight from the incumbents about the things they'll do and how they'll fix it, but they've already had a decade of opportunity to implement them while the district's standing has declined. I've experience serving as a board member. I have professional experience with budgets, finance, and facilities. I have personal experience as a parent in this district, and I was raised in the home of an educator. Along with many other parents, some of whom you heard from tonight, I advocated successfully to give all of our elementary families the choice of going back to school full-time this year. So I believe I've demonstrated to you that I know how to get results. I ask that you give me this opportunity to serve the community and help keep the district and all of our students performing at their fullest potential. Please do come out and vote on May 18th for Adam Smith, Adam Block, and Justin Renna. And while you're there, vote yes for the budget. Thank you.
Ms. Weisberg.
Thank you, Judy. I always appreciate your moderation. I have watched many of these events that you've moderated, and you always do an excellent job. Thank you to the league. Thank you to my fellow candidates for being here tonight, and thank you to everybody who has attended from home and has submitted questions. It is a critical part of democracy to hear from the people who are running. I believe that the most important words I ever heard as a candidate for school board came from my very dear friend and mentor, Karen Sloan, when she said, "I hope you understand that you're running for 2 terms, because if you only serve one, you will never be an effective board member. Your first term is learning how to do the job. Your next term is when you will be able to start to make changes." There were no truer words to me, and there still are no truer words to me, having sat in this seat for 6 years now. It is nearly impossible to make change as a new board member, nearly impossible. I agree with Mr. Block. It is time for change. We have a new superintendent who's been here for now 2 years. We have almost entirely new central administration. It will be new by the end of next year. That is a lot of change for a school district. And I believe if we want the changes that are coming out of the mission, vision, and strategic planning work that's coming, and if we want to see the changes that will come out of the NYU Metro equity work, the only way that will effectively be done is with the experience of myself, Ms. Johnson, and Mr. Greenstein. I believe that it is critical to maintain that stability right now, especially coming out of a pandemic. The lessons learned and the knowledge that we have is going to be invaluable in making the changes that we know are necessary, that we sought out and hired a superintendent who would be willing to make those changes with us. We really need your votes to continue that work. Please vote on May 18th.
Now, I want to say thank you. Thank you for a very informative and civil evening. I learned a lot about Port Washington from listening to you. And I want to thank you also for your willingness to answer questions from the public. There were many more questions that people sent in that the time wouldn't permit us to get to, but you handled everything beautifully. The budget and Board of Trustee election will take place on Tuesday, May 18th from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. at the Weber Middle School. If you are registered to vote in Port Washington, you are eligible to vote in this election. No special registration is necessary. And now, candidates, you may wave goodbye and leave the meeting, and thank you again.